You can catch a snook with anything. That's the fun part about snook fishing. What's up, everybody? Jesse Mails here. Again, talking about fish, which is something we all like to do. Trying to keep these fish stories as true, I guess you could say, as possible without embellishment. And we're just going around. We're talking about the first time I caught certain species on the fly. And today we're talking about snook. Now, snook, for a dude living in Florida, snook is on the list. They're everywhere. They're typically fairly simple to catch, depending on where you are and depending if they're laid up or something like that. They can be difficult. For me, in Crystal River, my best shot at catching a big snook on the fly was in Kings Bay in the wintertime. We have a lot of fresh water coming out up there, and it's warm water from the springs. So in the wintertime, those fish love that warm water and they need it to survive. So there's a ton of snook that can come into the bay, and it's a great opportunity to try and catch them. And for me, I remember tying up a god-awful, again, this is like years and years ago when I first started, really even when I first started fly tying, and I tied up, it was a white bottom clouser with gray and then black on the top, and more flashaboo, more silver flashaboo in there than you know what to do with. But I was thinking, okay, I want to create like a silhouette, but I want to have the flash, and we're night fishing, so I'm thinking, okay, this is gonna make sense. There was no moon at all, and we go out. We had this old aluminum canoe that my dad had from like a Sears catalog, I want to say, way back when, and we fished out of this thing my whole life. We fished out of this thing all the way up until I moved to Costa Rica. And it was just a simple aluminum canoe. We'd repaired it so many times it wasn't even funny. And the crazy thing is it was super loud too. Like you think to try and be stealthy in a aluminum canoe that's bending, and I don't know how we did it, but again, we're just using what we had. And at this point, I had upgraded from the 5 weight that I originally owned, that I used for everything, to a 7 weight. So now I had a good 7 weight rod. I think it was the TFO Pro Series 2 at the time, and a pretty decent saltwater reel on it. So I had a good setup now, I remember. And we're going out, it's nighttime, it's cold as hell. And it was always funny to go out at night like that, because if the fishing was on, you'd suffer through the cold, you know, but it could be brutally cold. And we were out, it was cold. I remember I had big jackets on, pitch dark, not really any bite happening. We're going up these little residential canals looking around, and they're covered with trees in this area, and I'm trying to fly cast down these canals in the pitch blackness. And we were coming up on an area we knew pretty well, so there's that dock there, and there's usually fish on it. I made a cast, let it sink a little bit, stripping it in, and I remember just this thing hitting the fly so hard, smashed the fly, come tight on it. My brother, I remember, was like, this was like, I don't even know if we owned headlamps. This is how it was going down. And I remember he was in the back, he was like tying on a new lure or something, so the canoe was in like a free drift position. And I hook up and we start skiing, and starts pulling the boat, and just, you know, you're trying to keep it out of structure, but the boat's moving. I'm stripping as much line as I could. I'm like telling my brother to get his lure tied on or get something to start paddling to pull me out, and ended up fighting a nice snook right out of there. And I was so pumped. You know, anytime, all these breakthroughs, all these steps where you're catching these new species, or you're finally getting that fish you're targeting, it gets you pumped, but it gets you more and more addicted to the scenario, and the more you want to be in that scenario. So like, it's like drugs for sure. It's like drugs. There's no doubt about that. It's like doing drugs. But I was so pumped. I think at this point my brother was working at the dive shop in Crystal River, and they had these little underwater cameras. I want to say we have a photo of it. We might not have a photo of this particular fish, but I was super, super pumped. And man, that again, I remember we fished. I ended up really figuring out the snook in that area on the fly and other species at night, which ended up being super, super cool that year. And it was just a good year for snook fishing too, overall. So that was my first snook, and since then I've caught so many, between the flats, you know, canals, lagoons, beaches, I mean, jungle rivers. Snook is just one of those fish that you could typically find in most places if you're in their zone, where they're living, and they typically will eat a fly pretty regularly, pretty easily. So a great fish to target. You could target them on top with gurglers, on, you know, down below with clouser minnows or other bait fish patterns. It's just a very versatile fish, and they eat just about everything you throw at them. So that's it, dudes. My first snook on the flies. Be sure, comment below, let me know when and how you caught your first snook. If you're liking these little stories, guys, where I'm going through these species, please share them. Let me know in the comment section below, and consider checking out our Patreon page, which is in the description as well. And I'll catch you guys later. Deuces.